Hey, what are the best ways to improve, maintain, or repair your credit? My previous posts stressed the importance of monitoring your credit, what to look for in your credit report, and what goes into credit scores. So with this one, I want to share with you all the ways I've learned through doing mortgage financing since 1995 of how to improve, maintain, or repair your credit. So first and foremost, payment history. And the easiest way to maintain a great payment history is to set up auto pay. And I'm pretty sure that every single account that you owe money on, you can set up an online account, log on, set up auto pay. But here's another thing I want to share with you is set up auto alert. Make sure you get a text alert, email alert if there's an issue, if the payment hasn't been received. And you might say, well, how has my payment not been received? It's on auto pay. Well, things happen. It's called life. Could be a bank issue. Could be the fact that maybe you didn't have enough money in your account. Maybe some of their bills cleared the account that you weren't expecting. You forgot about. Happens. There's an issue with the creditor's website. So you want to make sure you receive alerts if there's any time a payment has not been received. And by setting up those alerts, you'll also receive notice if there's been any charges to your account, maybe charges that you didn't authorize. That could be a sign of identity theft. And the quicker you can deal with identity theft, the less headaches you'll have later on. Now, when it comes to payments, there's something known as the due date, right? We pay by the due date. But here's the thing, if you pay before the due date, it could actually help with your credit score. And this typically will apply to credit cards, but take a look at those monthly statements. You're going to see a billing cycle date. And that billing cycle date is typically a couple weeks before the due date, the end of the billing cycle date, that is. And it's the end of the billing cycle date when creditors often report to the credit bureaus. And this is likely why when someone's going through a mortgage application, they tell me, I don't understand, my Visa, my MasterCard, my Discover, my American Express, I hate carrying interest. I pay these things off in full every month. I don't understand, why are they showing balances? Well, it's likely because they're being paid at the due date and the account's already been reported as of the end of the billing cycle date. Now, as far as the amount to pay, of course you want to pay the minimum due, okay? Otherwise, you're gonna have an issue if you don't pay the minimum due. But if you can pay more than the minimum due, you can save yourself money on interest, pay off that loan sooner. But there's something called trended data on credit reports. And that's a 2-year look back that can show whether or not the payment has been paid on time, whether it was 30 or 60 or 90 days late. But it can also show how much someone is paying on the account. If you're paying more than that minimum payment, it can reflect that you have good cash flow, you have assets, you haven't stretched yourself out so much that all you can afford is to pay the minimum. I mean, who wants to really pay a minimum on credit cards when they're typically 25 to 30%? Now, when it comes to charge cards, balance to limit ratio is very influential on credit scores. So using a scale of 100, whatever your credit limit is, do your best to stay below 30% of that credit limit. And if you charge it up, you go beyond that point, if you max it out, if you go over the limit, you gotta pay it down as soon as you can. You gotta make it a practice not to max out your card. And definitely don't go over the limit. And if you do, if you find yourself in that position, you gotta figure out a way to pay it down as soon as possible. Now, one way to help improve that balance to limit ratio is to ask for credit limit increases. If you had a good payment history and used your credit responsibly, you can very well be eligible for credit limit increases. Now, if you get the credit limit increase, it doesn't mean go out and charge something else and take it to the max. Use that with respect. You got to treat that balance to limit ratio as a precious good, if you will, because balance to limit ratio is about 30% of your credit score. Next to payment history is the biggest at 35%. Um, if you're carrying balances, never ever close your account. Okay, bad idea. And I see this happen one of two ways. One, someone will tell me, hey, I realized I had a lot of debt. I didn't want to incur anymore. So I closed the account so I couldn't access it anymore. I couldn't charge anymore. Well, that's great in theory. You cannot charge anymore, okay? But it's bad when it comes to credit score if you're carrying a balance and the account is closed. The other way I see this happen is that someone has some type of dispute with their creditor and, oh, I'm gonna fix them. They're no longer gonna get any of my business. I'm gonna close the account. Bad idea. It's really not gonna hurt them. It's really just gonna hurt you. It's gonna hurt your score to close that account out owing a balance. Now, if you have accounts open, again, so much of this ties into revolving debt, credit cards, home equity lines of credit. You can charge it up, pay it off, charge it again. Okay, so if you have dormant accounts, if you're perpetually carrying zero balances, it is, look, there's worse things that could happen. You could be paying late, you could be past due, over the limit, etc. But having dormant accounts may be hurting your score. So periodically charge on your accounts from time to time. Pay them off right away, but again, it's just showing that you have good credit management, you have some discipline, that you're not maxing out your cards, etc. But you do have to use them from time to time so that you get the most benefit when it comes to your credit score. And you should also establish new accounts from time to time. And that will show, again, you have good habits, you say open an account, you charge them a bit, you don't necessarily max it out as soon as you open it, you maintain a good payment history, and that will help with your credit mix. And again, another part of your credit score is the credit mix. If you have any authorized user accounts, if they're in good standing, you could leave them alone, okay? But if they're in bad standing, if they're paid late, if they're past due, they're over the limit, they're maxed out, etc., you can have the account owner have you removed as an authorized user. And that could have a very positive effect on your credit score. I've seen this time and time again where clients I've worked with have done just that, have themselves removed as authorized user on their underperforming account, and it's improved their score. To give you an example of how extreme just one account can be, there's one client that comes to memory that overall credit was really good. A nice mix of credit, good payment histories, except this one account. Severely late, past due, maxed out, over the limit, you name it, it was what was wrong with it. There's so much going on with just that one account. She had herself removed as authorized user, and her credit went up nearly 100 points. Hard to believe just one account could be worth that much, but that's the reality of credit scoring. Now, if you have any deferments or forbearances, and we see this quite a bit on student loans, ideally you want to have a payment history. And I know it helps with your budget each month, but what you can inquire about is what's called income-based repayments. And these can be very, very affordable. And at least that will show a payment history on those accounts. I've seen time and time again where individuals have several student loans. Not uncommon to see people with 6, 8, 10 student loans open, and none of them have payments because they're in a forbearance or deferment status. Once they go into that repayment status, I've seen the scores go up. So reach out to your student loan servicer, inquire about income-based repayments. If you have any past due balances, you fall behind on a car payment, for example, get that thing brought current as soon as you can. If you continue to carry it, it's going to continue to hurt your score. Collections and charge-offs. First of all, best advice with collections and charge-offs is do your best not to get to that point. If you're receiving notices of money owed, well, figure out what you can do to pay it off. Maybe the creditor will accept some type of payment plan or even a settlement balance, but you really don't want to get to a collection status or a charge-off. Ignoring it, it's not going to make it go away. It's really just going to make it worse. Now, Regarding medical collections, some good news there. In both 22 and 23, we saw a really good updates to when it comes to medical collections. And so first and foremost, if you pay your collection off, your medical collection that is, then they ultimately stop reporting to credit. And so they effectively get removed, and having collections removed from credit will certainly have a nice positive impact on score from my experience. Also, going forward from the point of 22 and 23, medical collections now have to be at least $500 and in a collection status for at least 12 months for them to be reported to credit. But here's the thing. You want to try your best not to get to that point, right? So if you're receiving those medical bills, and the excuse I've heard from most people over the years when it comes to medical collections, well, I thought health insurance was going to cover that. Well, in a perfect world, yeah, health insurance would cover it all, right? But that's not what happens. So if you're receiving those notices from the provider, the hospital, the emergency room you went to, well, pay attention. And at some point, they're saying, okay, insurance already paid their portion, here's what you owe. And your health insurance provider is also sending you statements likely to say, here's what was paid and here's what you owe. And if there's any confusion there, call both. Call your insurance provider, call the healthcare provider, find out what do I owe. And if it's something that's beyond your budget, see what options you have. Maybe you can set up a payment plan. Maybe there's even some type of forgiveness plan if you're going through a financial struggle. I've been told that they do exist. So inquire about those as well. Sometimes those bills can be really big, but if you can prevent yourself from getting to collection status, that's ideal. But if you do have a medical collection, see what you can do to pay it off, because you can see a nice improvement in score. And the last thing I'll leave you with is the most important thing when it comes to credit is monitoring your credit. Again, it's the best thing you can do. You'll realize what's going on with your credit at all times. You'll be better educated when it comes to the reporting process, when it comes to the scoring process. Studies do show that those who monitor their credit do see a nice positive improvement in credit scores. So I definitely encourage you to do that if you're not already doing so. The two that I use, myfico.com and creditkarma.com. Credit Karma is free. You're going to see Equifax and TransUnion. You're seeing Vantage scores versus MyFICO. You're going to see FICO scores. You're going to see multiple versions of your FICO scores. Most importantly, if you're trying to buy a home or refinance a mortgage, you're going to see FICO 542. And FICO 542 tends to skew the lowest of the scores that are available. So you can check both out. There's a few different paid monitoring plans through MyFICO. There's other websites you can access as well for monitoring service. So it's more than just the credit score itself here. Really pay attention to the big picture. Look, if there's anything I can help you with when it comes to credit reports, if you have questions on how a score works, what you can do to improve it, feel free to reach out to me. Just click on that link tree in my bio.